Okay, hello, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you all for joining us and welcome to our webinar. My name is Felipe Micana. I'm the Vice President of ASOCOPI, Asociación Colombiana de Profesores de Inglés. I am glad to see that you're here connected, that you're going to be participating in this series of webinars. For the ones who don't know maybe about us, we have been cultivating, supporting, and treasuring English language teaching since 1965. Last year, we celebrated 60 years in Santa Marta, so it's really an honor for me to be here sharing with you. Okay, just some quick remarks. Okay, so this is the National Board of Directors. We have our president, who is Professor Jonathan Vasquez. Then there is me, the vice president. We also have our secretary, Professor Jonathan Delgado from Universidad Única. We also have Professor Dusmari Quintero, who just defended her dissertation of the doctoral program. She's just finishing her dissertation right now, so we congratulate her for her accomplishment. And we also have Professor Wendy Panche, who is our vocal. Okay, so this is the board of directors, and of course, all the members of the community, the ELT community, are welcome to be here and to participate, no matter if you're in Colombia or if you are also elsewhere. Just a quick summary of what we do. ASOCOPI works in 6 different areas: education, culture, science, technology and innovation, social development. We also support nonprofit organizations, and we support educational initiatives and entrepreneurship. Okay, so part of what we do can be seen on our website. We have different conferences, we have webinars, we have workshops, we have diploma courses in education. This year, we are also glad to announce officially today here in front of you all the plenary speakers that are confirmed. Our event is going to take place at Universidad Industrial de Santander in October, from the 1st to the 3rd of October. So we're super excited to have Professor Berta Ramos Holguin, Professor Ryuko Kubota, Professor Samantha Coral, Dr. Jessid Ortega, and also Professor Dario Luis Vanegas, who are going to be participating in our annual conference. In this case, it is called Transforming ELT Context, Saberes Locales, Diversities, and AI. Remember, the call for paper is open until today, midnight, okay? ASOCOPI also leads series of cultural events. Here you can see some of the pictures of what we have been doing in these recent years. ASOCOPI also has a journal, which is an academic journal. It is called How. You all are invited to send and to share your contributions with us. And our last issue was recently released, okay? So we invite you all to check it out, to find more info about what we do in our journal as well. We have several partnerships, okay, different agreements. Here you can see some of those with Maloca, Universidad del Bosque, Universidad Nacional Abierta y a Distancia, among others. So feel free to be part of our community. If you would like to know more, drop us a line, and we are more than glad to be sharing what we do, okay? There is an important collaboration as well. We have a great partnership with YMCA Colombia, and we lead different initiatives throughout the region and also abroad, not only in Colombia, but also overseas. And well, here you see also part of what happened last year in Santa Marta in our academic event and in our celebration of the 60th anniversary. Okay, now let me just introduce my colleague, Professor Lina Beatriz Barrero-Molina. Lina is an English as foreign language educator in higher education. She works at Universidad Nacional de Colombia. And Lina, we are super glad to have you on board today. We really hope that this is a meaningful experience to you. We know that you have been working, teaching languages, okay, but more than all the titles, the accomplishments, being enrolled in the doctoral program you're pursuing right now in education at Universidad de Antioquia, also the master's degree in education that you followed at Universidad Nacional, and of course your bachelor degree in English philology. We are glad to have you here. The floor is all ears, and thank you all the attendees, and thank you all the participants for being here. Remember, you can leave your comments, questions, remarks on the chat box, and later Lina will have the opportunity to maybe address some of those. So thank you, Lina, and the floor is all yours.
Thank you very much, Professor Camilo. So hello, everybody. I am going to share with you my presentation. And here we are. I think You all can see it now. Good evening, everybody. My name is Lina. I am an EFL instructor, and I am also a doctoral student at Universidad de Antioquia. Today, I'm here to share with you a little bit of my research that we have been doing, collaborating with Dr. Andy Parra Martinez and Professor Milva Cárdenas during the last years, and we are focused on the motivation of students. So it's very important for me to be here sharing that emotional support and motivation make part of our classroom, and it's a very important asset that we can have as professors, as teachers, as instructors. We're going to start with this quote by the Nobel Prize laureate Morton Meldal. You only learn when you want to learn. As a teacher, you have to tickle curiosity. Today, we're going to see how we can tickle curiosity in our classroom and why that curiosity is important. That's the reason I'm going to take you all from wishful thinking to active doing in our classrooms, okay? Welcome on board, and we're going to start. This study started some years ago, and it is important because, as you know, Colombia has a very robust Programa Nacional de Bilingüismo, and during the last decades, we have been working on that. However, the ministry has certain requirements, like, for example, all professionals should finish their majors with a B2 level, but what we have in the reality is different. We have a very big attainment gap that we aim to see and consult what's happening behind of this, right? So we have this policy that has been in place since 2004, and it has been renovated a lot during these last years. These attainment goals remain unmet, and well, we need to understand what is happening here. We see that we have 70% of Colombian university graduates entering 2025 with A1 or A2 levels, while only 12% of our students are graduating with the required level by the ministry, which is B2. And it's also hyper-concentrated. We see that it only happens in certain cities, and the rest of the country's departments fall significantly behind. Now, behind this, there are many reasons. And we have been studying that in Colombia since many perspectives, from many views, like, designing the curricula. We have also seen what happens behind with gamification, with didactics, with the relationships in the classroom. But there is one specific factor that has been overlooked over years, and that is motivation and the importance of emotions in the classroom. So that's the reason why Professor Andy and Professor Milva joined into this, right? Our purpose in this study that was some years ago at Universidad Nacional was to compare two mandatory programs. And we have the first one, which is Paris. We're going to call it that because it's the mandatory classes that we have in the university. And then the next one, those are elective courses, and we're going to call it London. Why are we calling them like this? You may wonder. And it's because there's this very nice book by Charles Dickens, The Tale of Two Cities. When we were there, checking our results, we saw that we had two different stories telling in the same city, the university, but two different realities. And that's the reason we decided to give these two different realities different names, as the Paris of that moment and the London of that moment. You will see that, for example, the Paris program is a program that we see a lot in Colombia. Most universities in Colombia and higher education institutions need to offer these EFL mandatory programs because they need to meet the requirement posed by the Ministry of Education, which is B2, right? And sometimes because students come from a school with a lot of different, gaps, universities need to offer these courses. What's my point here? My point is that most of the English that we teach in Colombia is mandatory. Students are learning it because they need it. They need it because they need to fulfill a requirement, because they need to open doors in their professional careers, or they need to finally graduate. And what happens behind the mandatory courses, it's a different story. So many of you who are here are EFL instructors, some of you are researchers, some of you are students, right? And I would like you to tell me here in the chat, how many of you are in this moment teaching mandatory courses, or maybe have been part of mandatory courses as students, as teachers, as EFL instructors? And what happens there? You can just let me there, like, yes, me. Just I've been a professor in a mandatory course. Students are here because they need it. It's a requirement, but they're not actually here because it's interesting for them, right? This is something that we find a lot in our classes, right? Now, we saw this as from the expectancy value theory, and we took this theory because it has two factors that help us here. The first one is the expectancy, that is, do I think that I can succeed? And we have certain factors here, that is the perception of ability, the perception of difficulty of the task, and the effort that we are willing to put onto the task, right? And then we have these subjective task values, that is it worth it, right? We have the attainment value, intrinsic value, utility value, and the cost. How much am I willing to pay, and sacrifice to actually advance in this? And we're going to check that this theory is going to be the tenet that we will be talking about this today. So like in this study, we used a multi-stage mixed methods case study. We had a quantitative phase and a qualitative phase. We have 403 undergraduates. And we used two different questionnaires because we validated with Dr. Parra Martinez 2 different questionnaires for our Colombian populations. But today we're going to focus only on the expectancy value questionnaire posed by Eccles and Wakefield. You can see here that we had 4 focus group profiles that were analyzed and clustered after this first analysis. And it's important to say here that these 4 different groups were not pre-sampled. I mean, they came out naturally, organically from the structure and from the research. And we can see here that even in the mandatory courses, we also have students who are motivated. And in the elective courses, that are the ones that students are there for interest, we also have students with low motivation, right? It's important to see this because motivation is not only something that is static. And sometimes we misunderstand motivation as something that is or not, that it is there or it is not. And it's not like that. It doesn't work like that. Motivation is a very big construct, and it comes from like a motivation to totally intrinsic motivation. And in the middle of that, many things can happen. It's not just about if there is motivation or no, but what is the quality of motivation that is behind these students. And we all have different kinds of motivation. The fact that we're motivated to do something doesn't mean that specifically it's a good or a positive motivation, right? So like, we're going to see what are the items behind the expectancy value questionnaire. The expectancy value questionnaire originally has 19 items. Good. And then we took it and we validated it for our Colombian population. The first time that is validated here in Colombia, specifically for this population. And we took 2 factors, which were the ones that were the most reliable. We have ability and value. And ability is the perception. And here you can see some sample items of the instrument, right? These are the perceived ability, the value. We're going to delve into them. And we have the results. And in the results, that's the reason we have a tale of 2 cities. And we're going to see why. We have here all the different variables, constructs, factors, and we see that from 10 measures, 7 of them were significant when we cross them with achievement. And that's important to see because we actually see that there's something happening behind the motivation of our students at the university and in these courses. So like, it's important to pay attention to this part, what is happening with our students' beliefs, right? With the grades, with the achievement that is there, right? We also had this qualitative part of the study, and we got 5 different like main themes, qualitatively speaking, like experiences, for example. Sometimes experiences, are very significant for students. Overall, where students are unmotivated, right? So we see that even if students have 1 positive experience, but the rest of their lives, they have had negative experiences related to English, it's very hard for them to change the narrative that they already have in their heads, right? And I think that we have always had, like this situation of students who have had really bad experiences in school, and these have this narrative where they say, okay, I'm not good for this, that's it. It's a fixed mindset. I'm not good for this. I'm not just a language person, and that's it. And that's their excuse a little bit, right? But it's because experiences are really, really important, and they are very heavy when we talk about motivation, right? Now we have also the grades and the feedback loop, because it's important to mention that in these mandatory courses, they don't have a grade that will affect the GPA. We're going to talk about that a little bit later. And one of the topics that is the most important for me is the instructors transform value, because we as instructors, we have the power in our discourse to transform the value of the students, to make it significant for them. And we can do it not just with the example, but also with our discourse and also with the way in which we guide our students. They believe us, and we need to know that if they believe us, then we are example for them. They believe that we can lead them somewhere. That's important to know, right? Now, we're going to move on to the first group, which is our PARIS. Our PARIS is this English as a mandatory requirement, right? And this is a pass-fail proficiency course. There's no GPA impact. And here, because there's no GPA impact, you can see number 3 that the grades were noticed. You know, they were there, right? But they were not motivating because they didn't affect their GPA. And if we are in a context where students are very competitive, then grades actually mean something. That's something that we need to take into account, because most of the times policy makers at university level, college, ministry, and so on, they make decisions about this kind of stuff based on intuition. And the intuition that maybe the grade is not good, that maybe measuring is not good. And then left apart the grade when in the end it is actually important, right? So the idea here is not just make decisions over intention or over intuition, but over evidence, right? And motivation can give us evidence, right? Effort feels like a bad bet. So like if students feel that they can succeed at something, and I feel that that happens to all of us also, it doesn't necessarily happen inside the classroom. It happens to all of us. If we feel that we are not able to succeed at something, then why bother? Why do we put the effort on something if we don't feel that we can actually succeed at something? And that's part of the motivation here in the students, right? Now, bad experiences produce dullness, indifference, right? And then the good experiences only raise this utility value, like English is important and it's going to be useful, but it didn't raise any intrinsic value of the subject. And then on the other hand, we have London, right? In these London courses, these are elective courses that are interest-based classes, right? And like these courses, of course, they have a grade here. So like grades motivated and they protected the GPA. This is a nice discussion that we can have later, but it's like here grades actually meant that the students were motivated, not just because of the number, but because that number translated the effort of the students. And they could see that their effort and their ability to succeed, their perception of ability was actually translated into the number. And this is a case where we can see that grades actually mean something for students and they can be motivated rather than unmotivated. So like higher confidence for students, that means that there is willingness to invest effort. If I know that I can succeed, right, then I can put a lot of effort into this, right? Positive experiences shape the perception, and that's the reason why we should always pay attention to what we're talking to students and how we're saying it. Now, let's go here to theory, like from the theory to the tool. Because take into account, consider that most of our courses are like Paris, right? Most of our courses in Colombia, as a country level, are like Paris. We are teaching students who are there because they are in mandatory courses. It's a requirement for them. How can we motivate our students? You know, because sometimes it's not only what we do in the classroom, it's not only the activity, the game, the workout that we put, the workshop, it's not just that. There's something deep down that is bigger, and is the paradigm, the narrative that the students have in their minds about their capacities, about their ability to succeed. And if we don't aim and target that ability to succeed, it's very hard for the other tools to actually help. So now, we validated. And today I'm going to share with you one of the instruments that we validated with Dr. Parra Martinez, and is the expectancy value questionnaire for Colombian EFL university students, right? So like, I am going to share this with you here in the chat, okay? And you're welcome to start, okay? You're welcome to start answering it, okay? So we're gonna go there, and maybe if you're students, then amazing, you can answer to it from your experience in this moment. But if you are teachers, if you are EFL instructors, you will answer it as if you were your student. If you were your student and you were in your class, what would you be thinking? If you're not a student in this moment or an EFL instructor, then you can answer it as a researcher. I'm sure that we all have had an English class at some point in our lives. Think about the last time that you took that English class, that EFL course, right? Go ahead, think about it, and answer the instrument that I am sharing with you, okay? So I am going to go over it with you, okay? So here we are. I have the expectancy value questionnaire. This is the Colombian version. And you just to start, you have an informed consent here, and you can continue. As you have here, you have 15 items that were the ones that were validated over ability and value. And they are in Spanish. And you see that they have different scales, right? They go from 1 to 7 in a Likert scale, but they have different measures. We have muy aburrido, muy interesante, no mucho, mucho, no vale la pena, vale mucho la pena. We have different measures there, right? So you are invited to go ahead and answer it. I am going to pre-fill this here for you in the lowest scores to show you how this works, right? And so I'm doing this targeting this profile of a student that we may have in our classes, right? And then when you find the data here, you will get an analysis. Like for example, in my case, I got in riesgo, which have low value and a low perception of their own ability. And all the details that you can see here are based on the research that we did with the National University students, like over these UNAL numbers, right? So now we have here an analysis and an action plan. And then you can see here the interpretation according to the literature, but you can also see some practical actions that you can take as a student in case you need to work on that, in case you want to, right? Now here you can see a pre-done mail for the teachers. Now, why do we do this? Because one of the biggest problems that we see with the students is that they don't communicate how they are feeling. They don't communicate their needs. And sometimes they just say yes, great, I'm getting it, I'm understanding, but they are not. And it's hard for them to reach for help. One of the skills that we want our students to have is that they can reach for help. So this is just a way in which we can help them to reach for their professors, for their instructors, right? So this is something that you can have there. Each profile, we have 4 different profiles, has a different email, different recommendations, and different theory behind. Now we're going to continue. You have there your results. I wanted to hold with your results there, and we're going to continue again. So what happens here? Let's suppose that we have 2 students. We have the same grade, but we have different motivation. So let's go with a student A. This student A is the one that studies for hours, right? Struggles with grammar, says English will change her professional life. But then we have student B, who barely opens the book, breezes through exams, says English is irrelevant to his career. They are both motivated. They just have different motivations, right? But which one is more motivated? We have to name what we see, because otherwise it's difficult to help them into the process, right? Now we have the same gap, and the reason I put this here is because we are in a different audience, right? So for teachers, we need to know which lever to pull for each student, because each profile has a different level, of course. And then for researchers, Colombian EFL context lack instruments rooted in motivation theory, and we need them. Nowadays, when we see how important emotional support and scaffolding is for our students, not only in EFL learning, but in all areas, it's very important to put our eye onto motivation, right? And for administrators, what I was telling you before, institutional policy on English needs evidence, not intuition, right? So this is what we are set out to solve today. Now, why do we choose this specific theory? Well, because this theory has been happening from a lot of years ago. We have 30 years of evidence or more, right? It has been replicated across very different academic domains like mathematics, physical education, age groups, and cultural since Eccles' original 1983 model. It is also actionable and not descriptive, right? So unlike other theories, the EBT actually identifies what we need to intervene, right? And then it connects affect and behavior because it explains both why students and why they quit, right? Like, why are they in the process that they are? Why do they quit or why they stay? Okay, so we're going to continue with that. And my motivation, as I was telling you, is not static. It just does not form in a vacuum. It is not only there. It has a whole model. And sometimes we don't understand what motivation is, and that's the reason we just don't give the value that it needs. So like, we have the cultural milieu because this is the full model of Eccles and Wakefield, right? And the cultural milieu says that sometimes we believe certain things because we have cultural stereotypes. So we have been raised in the society and they have repeated to us certain things, gender stereotypes, certain discourses, certain narratives, and we believe that, right? So like, that's the reason why they affect the way in which we believe in ourselves, the stereotypes that we have, and then we have the socializers, okay? We have relationship with our parents, the teachers, the beliefs, the behaviors, expectations, and we believe what our parents tell us. We believe what our teachers or professors tell us. You have the child's perceptions and the interpretations of past experiences and affective memories. So that's the reason why we see students traumatized with English, because experiences actually have a process and they are heavy for them, right? And now we are standing here today in expectancies and values, which are the two proximal predictors at the heart of this module. And then after this, we can go to choice and performance, which is what can we do for our students? You know, what the student actually does, how we can replicate it, shape it, lead this, or like take them into this process, right? Now we're going to continue with this, and it's like, we have two different things, like values, and we have ability, expectation, right? Now, this value has four phases. The first one is the intrinsic value, right? Do I enjoy it? And we have this student who reads English novels for fun, or the student who watches series because they just really like it, right? We have the utility value, which is one of the most, like the biggest profiles in universities. Like, is it useful for my goals? That is the future doctor who needs English to publish, for example. And we have attainment value, that's being good at this matter to who I am. And this is totally related to identity, how the others see me. You know, it's extrinsic, right? The student who sees fluency as part of identity because it gives a good image. And we have the cost. What do I sacrifice? What do I sacrifice to do it? So I have to sacrifice time, effort, miss alternatives, anxiety, asking for help, learning how to ask for help, right? So like, we could see that, for example, a future doctor may rate English utility extremely high while intrinsic value stays low. Both set behaviors, both are motivations, but they are different motivations, right? And until we know what is the motivation that our students have, we can't help them, right? Now, the expectancy, which is the other factor that we have here, do I think I can succeed, is divided into two components. The ability beliefs, right? How good am I at this, right? So like, sometimes we have stable judgments about one's competence that are formed throughout experience, right? So we have the student who says like, oh no, I'm really bad at English. You know, like, this is not for me. This is not my cup of tea. And that shape, it's because the student has had different experiences, or maybe, you know, that we keep teaching the verb to be after 11 years in academia, and they come to college and we teach again the verb to be. And so for students, the message is like, okay, if I'm learning this again, it's because I'm not good at this, you know, like, again, like, I haven't been able to actually learn it. And we have to be very careful with that because, you know, that setback can totally destroy students' motivation. You have the expectancy for success. How well will I do on the next task? So sometimes we look forward for this, right? It's the prediction tied to a specific upcoming task closer to Bandura's self-efficacy, right? So like in EFL, in English as a foreign language, we have the most common pattern, but it's also the most fragile. Like, it does not only happen in English, it happens in many different areas, but it's also very, very fragile, right? EFL students typically value English highly because we all tell students that English is important. It's important for their career, for their mobility, for their identity, for their status. It opens doors. Students know that. They already know that English is important, right? But then they often expect little success because if they have been learning the same thing over and over the years, then they feel that they are not intelligent enough, or smart enough or capable enough, right? So like they perceive themselves with, low ability beliefs, right? And this combination is very fragile because the motivation is there, but the first setback can extinguish effort, right? Motivation is there, our students are there, but if they feel or perceive a setback, then it's totally crashed. They are not willing to do it again, right? So that is because this instrument is very rich, because it helps us profile our students. Now, we have two different ways to relate expectancy and value. And we have theoretical shifts into this, but we have the first inverse relationship, value expectancy. Highly valued tasks must be difficult. Easy successes are not worth pursuing. And this is something that happens to all of us. Like, this is not just something that happens inside the micro system of the classroom. It happens to us every day, right? And if we see it in that way, we can help our students better. Now, we have the positive relationship, which is the one that this model actually considers, which is the students value what they feel competent at. Confidence and value reinforce each other over time. If students don't feel competent at something or don't perceive that they can succeed at something, then there's no confidence. And if there's no confidence, there's no value. And if there's no value, then there's no motivation, right? The motivation will be very low. And this is the reason it actually, matters. To lift one factor, we may need to work on the other. Confidence builds value, and value builds engagement. If we want engaged students, then we need to build their confidence, because sometimes we think that students are just lazy, and students perceive themselves as that. Teacher, is just I'm lazy, or I procrastinate a lot. But it's not about that. Sometimes it's not just that. There is something behind procrastination. There is something behind being lazy. Sometimes it's not just that the student is lazy. Student is just not motivated. The student can't see himself or herself being successful at what they are learning. So if they don't see themselves being successful, why bother? Why do I have to put on the effort if I am not going to succeed at this? I don't have the confidence, so I don't value this. And that's the reason we need to work this out as something very strong, so that we can collaborate and actually help our students, right? So this is the validation that we did and why it was very important for our students and how we understood this. And we had two factors and four motivational profiles. So like some of you, when you did the instrument, maybe you got motivated but uncertain, motivated and confident, at risk, which is the one that I just showed you, or capable but disengaged, right? So we have these four different profiles. And if you remember nothing else about this talk, I hope that you remember these four, because these are the ones that are going to help you in your classes, being a student or being an instructor or being a researcher, okay? So we have, for example, motivated but uncertain. And in this case, what we need to focus on is building confidence, right? Scaffold achievable wins, make progress visible week by week. Then if we have motivated and confident, we have high value, high ability. These are the students that are like the ideal students. We want to have these students in class, right? And when we have these students, we just have to raise the ceiling, offer enrichment, leadership roles, authentic English tasks, debate, research, mentoring peers. We have at-risk students, which are the ones who bring us together to work for our students, low value, low ability. And when this happens and we have this kind of students, we have to just connect and stabilize. This is the first part. So we usually begin with a one-on-one conversation. We identify the fruit. We reduce visible competition, because competition at this point, when there is no motivation at all, will not help, right? And sometimes if we need to refer to support services, we need to, because sometimes it's not just English. There's something else happening before and behind this, right? And the last one, we have capable but disengaged. We have low value, high ability. Like, make it matter, because these are the students who can make it but don't want to, because they don't see why, right? So English explicitly to their career, interests, identity, and it's good for them to actually work on this brief utility value, being the writing task or oral tasks, but that are meaningful for them. Okay, now we're going to go, this is the trustworthiness of our instrument. And we're going to go with the profiles, okay? Because knowing the profile is only the first half of this path, right? Of this work. We have different profiles, we have different levers, right? Because sometimes what leaves a motivated but uncertain student will not move a capable but disengaged one, right? You have to build the missing side first, strengthen whichever factor is below the midpoint. You can see students have their answers. You have to strengthen which is the one that is below the midpoint. Value or expectancy, the order will follow, right? And the small wins compound. Confidence builds value, value builds engagement, engagement builds confidence, and so on. The cycle, there's a cycle there. So like we have recommendations for each profile, and with these recommendations, I'm going to finish, okay? So for one of the profiles, we have motivated but uncertain, right? We have a lot of students with this, like they are motivated, but, they don't believe that success is possible. So they want to learn, but they don't perceive themselves as strong learners. And so like in this point, this, until the students believe success is possible, more why English matters lectures won't help. They know that English matters. They just know how to trust on their abilities, right? Here we have what the research says, and here are some classroom signals that you'll see when you have these students. These are the students who hesitate to speak even when they clearly know the answer. They over-prepare written work, attributes a low quiz score to not being a language person, rather to a specific skill gap, and asks a lot is it this right more often than what did you think? Sorry. Okay, and here we have some recommendations. So at this point, you have to build confidence. Small wins made visible, right? So like here, it's important to scaffold. Scaffold 1 micro skill per week, make progress legible. They need to know that they're advancing. They need to see that they can succeed. Separate practice for evaluation. Students need the opportunity to see that they can practice and they can feel confident before they feel evaluated. Replace "Are you good at English?" with "Where are you in English?" Changing the discourse that we give to our students, it's actually very important for them and encourages them to change the discourse that they have with themselves. So it's not asking, "Oh, I'm not good at this." It's not, "I'm learning. I'm in the process. What am I at this?" "Oh, I'm a beginner." And it's good. It's okay to be a beginner, right? So like, how you'll know this is working? Because student starts volunteering more in class, Self-attribution shifts from "I'm bad at English" to "I haven't practiced this part yet, but I can do it," right? And students start asking for harder tasks unprompted. We have the next profile, which is motivated and confident, and these are the ideal students that we all want to have. But when we have these students, we have to raise the ceiling, right? These students are the emerging or well-developed interests. Engagement feels relatively effortless, even with hard content, and they generate questions that go beyond the assignment. So these are the students who always ask questions beyond the lessons, reads or watches English content outside the class, finishes early and seems understretched on standard tasks, pushes back productively on textbooks examples. What do we do with these students? Because, the idea with these students is not like just, "Oh, close the door because this is all that I can offer to you." No. You can offer more to these students, right? It's don't manufacture relevance for a student who's already found it. Open the doors, right? So what can we do with these students? Authentic English tasks, not textbook English tasks, right? They will appreciate that. Leadership and mentoring roles, they need to feel empowered, right? Pair them with at-risk students, for example. Choice over content, not effort. Let them pick what they want to. The topic for the essay, the article that they'll summarize, the angle of presentation, because when they feel that they can choose, their creativity and their confidence will keep improving. And then bridge to identity and career, right? We can start practicing how you connect this to your career and how this is important for you, rather than just the English class, because this is the course will finish, but English will stay with you. So we need to anchor this to something that is meaningful and significant for you. And then how you'll know it's working? Because the students, they voluntary use of English outside class assignments, questions that go beyond the lesson rather than checking comprehension, continued enrollment in advanced electives the following term, for example. And we go with the next profile, the one that brings us together here and is at risk. And before strategy, before utility, we need to create connection with these students, because they are in the point, this is like the emergency room. They are low. in both value and ability. So both expectancy and value are low. A utility value prompt landed in this stage often reads as one more thing they can't do, right? So you need to start with the relationship and the cause. How do we identify these students? These are the students who usually have frequent absences, assignments missed without explanation, disengaged body language. You can see that in your classroom, even when nothing else is going wrong in the room, and names the cause as something stable. You know, where students have this fixed mindset rather than the growing mindset, it's very hard. So I'm just not a language person. And we need to start shaping the discourse into something that they can grow onto, they can work onto that, right? So like, we need to connect and stabilize. That's the first thing that you need to know, right? So begin with a one-on-one conversation, reduce visible competition, refer or work when the food is in English, sometimes this happens, and create one reliable success per week, because they also need to know that they can succeed at something. That's very important for them. How do you know it's working? Well, attendance stabilizes even before grades move. The student answers a direct question without immediate self-deprecation, and they re-enroll in the next required English course rather than dropping the requirement. That's very important to see. And then we have the last profile, which is capable but disengaged. This is the student that can but won't, right? So make it matter for them because they can, but they just don't see a reason why. So it's a canonical population for utility value interventions, right? Because ability isn't the problem, perceived personal usefulness is, you know? So what can we do? How do we see? You know, these are the students that really ask, when am I ever going to use this? Not being, you know, like as a complaint, but being sincerely. And we have a strong test scores, the low effort or anything that is ungraded, and they usually take out the phone the moment the task feels pointless or they don't see a relation. What can we do for them? Make it matter. So short, self-generated, repeated. We have used, this is a method that is done here. It's a tool. You can use the 3 short writing tasks, no one big one. And this is a follow-up that you can do in your classes. Make students generate the connection, offer choice of topic and frame, and tie English to identity, not just utility, because they know it is useful, right? You'll know it's working because you have students voluntarily participating in class after the second task in the writing section. And, you know, students choose a follow-on English course they weren't required to take, for example. So now we have all these different profiles. And this is a last invitation for you as students, as teachers, and researchers, right? For the students, this instrument can give you immediate theory-grounded feedback on where you are, right? Recognition that motivation is multidimensional. It's not because you're lazy. There's something happening behind, right? And it gives the students agency over their decisions. Okay, I am motivated. I don't see a point in this. What can I do for this, right? For teacher, you can have class-level diagnostic data, profile-based differentiated interventions for your students, pre- and post-tracking of motivational change. And for researchers, well, we can have a structured data, replicable across cohorts and other areas also. And this can be foundational for institutional studies, right? Now, thank you very much for your attention. And I'll leave you here with some of the recommendations for teachers. Use it in your classes this semester, right? And let's meet then, and then we can talk about it. Replicate for validation in Colombia. And to administrators, this is important. Use this evidence to inform institutional language policy. Move from anecdote to data, because that's what research is for, right? Theory tell us why, validation let us measure. It's important. We have an app that we can use, and research can become pedagogy. So if you want to collaborate, please let us know. This is my LinkedIn, and this is Professor Parra Martinez LinkedIn. We're open to collaboration. We're open to just talk about research, talk about what we can do for our students and how important it is for them. And if you have any questions, you can just drop them now. And if you follow this QR, you can download the EFL instructor handout. So I've prepared this handout with the information that I shared with you today. So you can download it and have this information for you. You have here all the theory grounded, and here you have the different profiles, what you can do with each of the profiles. And finally, you have a toolkit of different activities that you can, you know, put into practice, and where this comes from, which is the literature that we have here, and stay in touch. Thank you very much for your participation and for being here in this occasion.
Okay, thank you, Lina. So you received a big round of applause. So thank you all the attendees and the participants in today's webinar. It was super interesting, very informed presentation. And I think we, the ones who are teachers, the ones who are working with students at different places, we have a lot to do and a lot to work, okay, to better inform our decisions and maybe what we do in class. There are a couple of questions there, so I would like you to address them if that's possible. And I also invite the participants to share their comments, questions there. Magdalena asked before, how can we motivate English students from remote areas in the country? So what about these, contextual realities and what happened from your perspective with people who are not necessarily, in a city or in a place like ours, for example, in Bogota? What would you say?
That's a great question. And it's like, we don't have, as I was telling you in the presentation, we don't have a lot of informed policies or informed decisions from motivational perspectives because we live in a country that has had to deal with more urgent issues first, right? Our country has been otherwise engaged, dealing with violence, dealing with sociology, dealing with anthropology, dealing with how to actually support the needs, the basic needs. And that's the reason why to this point, we are starting to see how we can motivate the students after. So it's very important to take into account that to get to the remote areas, we first need to bring it here. We first need to validate. We first need to have these strong decisions made and this strong path to actually replicate, right? Sometimes we don't replicate these studies and they just stay in the cities. And I think that that's the mistake. It takes a long way to actually take them to the remote areas, but it is possible. And it's an invitation that I am here to make. Like if we can do this research here at National University or at big universities, we can also take this information to all the other, like the other branches, for example, or to all the other areas. And we'll see how we can handle that. But now this is an invitation for you all because this motivation area in Colombia is kind of new. We're just starting to take informed decisions from perspectives, from these motivational perspectives. And that's the reason we don't have a lot of motivational validation tools to get to students and to make and create policy based on this. So if we get together and we actually do research together, I'm sure that we can create something meaningful and big. So this is a call for community, a call for collaboration, and a call for you to understand that when we are just not teachers, we're also researchers. Each time we are in our classes, if we join forces, we can do something bigger for our students in Colombia. So that's the dream. That's the objective. Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you, Lina. Yes, I do agree with you. Maybe it's more about collaborating, getting to know what another colleague is doing, for example, in her research and maybe connecting. So Copy could be a platform, to foster this collaboration, and it's relevant that you all are here precisely to get to know what other colleagues are doing and also to connect. There is another question there by Magdalena, and she said, why do you think these theories and info is not generally taught in teachers' formation or taught in institutional planning? Maybe you somehow addressed that comment, but well, what else can you say about that part?
I think it has the same root, right? So historically, it hasn't been taught in our programs, but it's because we have been otherwise engaged into history, into culturally appropriateness, into other things. And sometimes we have had this motivation area held behind. Psychology hasn't been a big part of our pedagogical instruction, even though we have classes related to that. But then it is not up until we are in the real area, in the arena, doing our classes that we realize that it is important. And this is also a call. If we have more research related to motivation, to emotions, then we may have had more informed policies and more information to make stronger proposals, right? To include motivation, to include these psychological points of view in the curricula of students who are studying to become professors, to become teachers. It is essential, it is important, and I think this is a new area that we are invited to work on. So yeah, that is basically.
Okay, yeah, maybe education does require more interdisciplinary approaches rather than just simply thinking about the content, thinking about a fixed curricula, and more about possibilities of bringing elements together. And Lina, I don't want to leave you go without asking if you can maybe spread some light on this distinction between motivation, investment, and engagement, because those terms have been around the field of ELT, English language teaching, and at times they overlap. In this case, you were presenting a lot on motivation, but what else can you say, for example, about those reflections related to investment and engagement? I think you used engagement when you were presenting.
Yeah, well, this has been like the theoretical approaches to this is still discussed. Like we have Atkinson theories and we have Gardner and we have many other perspectives here. And when we go and read specifically, they have not come to a specific agreement. But I can tell you from self-determination theory, for example, where motivation is a continuum from amotivation to intrinsic motivation, that motivation is not only static, it's a construct, it moves, right? So we have this motivation going through extrinsic motivations up until intrinsic motivation, which is the totally motivation. And this is an organismic point of view of motivation. If we see motivation as this organismic point of view, that is a process and it's something very big, you know, and it's actually motivation is always directed to fulfill the basic psychological needs, right? We have competence, we have relation, we have achievement. Like if we think motivation from this organismic point of view, we can see it like easily. Now, let's say the motivation is there, right, in this continuum and in this approach. So it's not that motivation is there or not there, it's just the quality of motivation changes. Inside this motivation, we have this term, the big term that is the cost. And the cost is the one that is related to investment, right? So when we talk about the cost, we talk about what are we here to sacrifice in order to learn whatever I'm learning, right? So let's say that I am learning mathematics, right? And I don't understand this very well. So I am here to say, okay, maybe I think that I can succeed on this. So I am going to invest my time. I'm going to invest my effort. I'm going to invest all of my resources, social resources, emotional resources into this. Is this worth it to invest or not? And that's when we come as professors, as leaders, as instructors to tell our students, yes, it's worth it because you can succeed, right? And we need to raise that value and that confidence for our students to actually invest all of those different things that I just mentioned, because that's the cost. So the cost is related to the investment, and then engagement is what happens as a result. If our students feel confident that they can succeed into something because they see value in what they are learning and they feel that they can succeed, they believe in their abilities, then they will be engaged. So engagement is like, for me, at the end of the straw. It's like engagement happens because we understand that motivation is this very big organismic point. And then we understand that we need to raise value. We understand that we need to make students believe that they can succeed. And if we understand all of those and we actually work towards that purpose, then engagement happens. And a student will naturally engage into the activities that you propose or into the learning. That is what you want. So yeah, that's it. That's the basic answer that I can give you from the theories.
Okay, so thank you so much, Lina. And I think we can just all give you another round of applause because it's been very insightful. I think there are many questions. Feel free to contact her as well if there is, the possibility to collaborate, to maybe embark on different research journeys and to reflect upon the field. So thank you, Lina, so much for this. And I just would like to close it up with some remarks, okay? So remember, guys, that there is a special call for school teachers on the go. Okay, so if you are a school teacher or if you know some school teachers that would like to be presenting as plenary speakers in our Congress, feel free to invite them. Okay, feel free to scan this QR code to see our website and to participate. This is open. Okay, so just keep it in mind. And as I said at the very beginning, to the ones who were here earlier, our call for papers closes tonight. Okay, so it's going to be open for you to register tonight. We have received some messages, okay, and some comments from people asking for an extension. The board of directors is analyzing, this possibility. Probably we are going to have a 15, 20 days extension, but please, if you have your paper ready, remember, upload it there, and all the papers are going to follow an evaluation process, okay? So just keep it in mind. Our call is open and it'll be closing tonight. Then, just for you to know, we would have in May 2 interesting webinars, okay? One on May 13th this year and also another one on May 27th. So we're going to be sharing with you all this information, so feel free to join us, feel free to scan the QR codes, check our social media, and participate as you did today, okay? So bringing the community together is what we are doing right now. If it is the case, as Lina did, hey, Felipe, I would like participate. I would like to lead one of the webinars in Asocopy. Feel free to do it, okay? You are more than welcome. Our agenda is open, okay? We have some possibilities, I think, in the second part of the year, so feel free to contact us and we will be helping you and supporting you throughout this process. So you are all invited. This is also our WhatsApp community. There is an informative there. You can also join it, scan the QR code. We share info related to our events, to our conference, to our partnerships. Okay, so feel free to be part of this community as well. And last but not least, follow us on social media. Okay, we have a website on Facebook. There is also an X account. We have Instagram, YouTube. All these videos going to be uploaded and shared with all the community as well. So stay tuned. And thank you, Lina, once again for being here, for sharing your work. And well, guys, enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you very much. Okay, thank you.